Many people living in the most technologically advanced societies are undergoing a gradual yet profound shift in their attitudes towards technology itself. Excitement for the latest gadgets is more likely to be met with a shrug of the shoulders because, frankly, we're running out of things to be truly excited about when it comes to the latest disruptive app, smartphone, electric vehicle, software, or what have you. Take, for instance, the Apple Vision Pro, the first generation face computer we are all being assured will usher in a revolution in personal convenience. Putting aside the potential health dangers of putting a hot electronic device so close to your brain for hours at a time, people are struggling to see what, if anything, the bulky headset actually does to improve on what they could already do with the laptop or flat screen TV. Well, what about Apple's new AI software? They announced it would be standard in the latest iPhone operating systems, recording and sending to Apple everything you say, text, and search in order to train their algorithms. Not only are people not enthusiastic and highly skeptical, but many are now dreaming of returning to their iPhone 4 or 5 because, well, no one's asking these companies for these supposedly great new features that only seem to be accelerating their future unemployment thanks to the tech industry's obsession with automation. We have reached a technological plateau with regards to the usefulness and necessity of the latest innovations coming from the multi-billion-dollar tech industry. Our lives are not getting any more enjoyable nor easier the higher we climb the mountain of technology. It is the job of these companies to innovate, so don't expect the mountaineers of innovation to pack up and scale down anytime soon. But we as individuals have gotten caught up in this endless cycle, and it's affecting our psychology, which hasn't been explained in the way I'm about to describe. Just as each planet is a force in our individual consciousness, groups of people and entire societies form a collective pattern on how to apply that force and create a conceptual framework on what it is and how it should be used. For example, all societies have an understanding of an ideal leader, the requirements for leadership, how a leader should behave, the structure and organization of governing bodies, and so on. This is the society's collective consciousness of the sun force, which is the force of authority and power within each individual, and so by extension, in groups of individuals. The sun is all of these forces, but the sun is many things simultaneously, as are all of the other planets, many things simultaneously. The technotronic era has morphed and sometimes completely inverted each planetary force individually and collectively. But today I'm going to be speaking specifically about the Venus force within us and how it's undergoing this gradual psychological and attitudinal shift towards technology. Venus does not influence us to produce technology itself. Technology is actually a combination of Jupiter, which is creativity, Mercury, communications, and Rahu, which is newness. Technology's effect on our Venusian consciousness is what we're going to be investigating. So what is Venus? To start, it's our ability to do things that make life easier and more enjoyable than having to do everything ourselves. Instead of building a computer from scratch, from the mining of precious metals for the hardware, manufacturing the circuit boards, etc., we just go out and buy a computer. It's just easier to do that, and a positive attribute of Venus is attracting more convenient experiences into your life, and technology has profoundly affected the convenience of daily life. Venus rules vehicles, for example, because vehicles allow us the convenience of not having to walk everywhere. So Venus is the force that makes life run smoother. Obviously, technology has taken us to the extreme end of the spectrum of convenience, and that has meant a loss of practical skills. We've become nearly 100% dependent upon the convenience of technology, and the classic example is the film WALL-E, a society so dependent that human beings have become this pathetic version of themselves who couldn't survive 5 minutes or even 5 seconds without a technological interface. This is the Venusian comfort taken to an extreme. A balanced use of technology is very healthy. The less time we need to spend on menial tasks, the more time we can enjoy life. Venus is the planet of entertainment, of leisure time, and enjoying the finer things. Relaxing rejuvenates our bodies, minds, and souls so we can step back into our working life with greater vigor and energy. An unhealthy Venus doesn't value taking time off from work, or worse, becomes addicted to the pleasurable experiences while not working, essentially the passive state of consumption. Now that we have a century's worth of TV and film series at our immediate disposal via streaming services, the quality of leisure time has been diluted because now every night is movie night. The first time I saw a streaming company promote the idea of binging, I almost couldn't believe it. How a word that was always negatively associated with drinking until blacking out was now being used to promote watching entertainment until you pass out. Excessive indulgence has become commonplace. Perhaps the most important idea ingrained into the Venusian consciousness is trade, the give and take we make every single day during so many different activities. The most important give and take we make during life is what other people we choose to invest in. And this is why Venus is the planet of relationships. What are we giving and what are we receiving when we're dealing with other people? And that's what every relationship, romantic or otherwise, boils down to. When you give another person what they don't have yet what they need, while receiving what you don't have and what you need, a relationship can be harmonious and life can flow much smoother. When two people are harmonious together, they can form a long-lasting and deep appreciation for the other person, which is a more sound idea of love when we rise and grow in love rather than fall or descend in love. And that semantic difference reveals a profound difference in what modern society tells us what love ought to be. So a huge part of Venus is wise decision-making based on the choices we have at hand, the weighing of the options in front of us. Venus rules the sign Libra, which is the scales in a market. The convenience of dating apps has warped the world of romantic relationships in a number of ways. And one of the principal reasons is because of the excess of choices, the grass is always greener phenomenon. Social media was meant to bring us all closer together to strengthen the bonds of a given relationship, but we can all see that the opposite has happened. People feel more isolated and cut off from other people than ever. People are starved for authentic relationships, and the Venusian need to connect with others on a deep and meaningful level is becoming more rare for the younger generation who've never lived in a world where human-to-human relationships are not being mediated by a social media app. We're staring down a sad dystopia of people dating robots, believing that the Venusian force within us will be truly satisfied by such an artificial connection. So a very important element of Venus is what we choose to spend our time and money on, which reveals what we value, and what we value determines the quality of our life. The modern world has come to revolve around technology. It is one of the fundamental bases of our value systems. And so our self-value has become intricately tied to technology. The ultimate goal of the technocratic society is the implementation of technology within our very bodies, which is transhumanism. Of course, many people will jump at that opportunity, just as people still camp out on the Apple Store sidewalks. But remember that it will always be a choice to partake in this experiment of transhumanism. This is indeed the ultimate choice when it comes to the future of the Venusian force within us, and there will be no going back once a person takes this step into the technological unknown. In many futuristic depictions in popular culture, like the Jetsons, we were presented with a world where robots do our chores and make life a breeze. And this was the early promise of many technological futurists. But the reality is that the robots won't be mowing our lawns and cooking our meals. We will become the robots. Before I get into some key positive developments that have taken place with regards to a healthy expression of Venus, I want to touch on an important astrological transit. Pluto recently entered the sign of Aquarius in March 2023 and will be traveling there until 2043, not counting the one-year periods when Pluto retrogrades on the cusps of the adjacent signs. The 7 visible planets are the forces in our consciousness, while the 3 outer planets, which are invisible to the naked eye, are forces in our subconsciousness. Pluto is the subconscious force within us and within society that destroys what is no longer applicable to our lives and our self-identity, and from the burnt ashes, something new is able to be born. Pluto transiting through the practical survivalist sign Capricorn from 2008 until 2023 destroyed the fundamental way we survive as humans today. It was the era of the birth of the smartphone and the rise of social media. Before 2008, one could quite easily live without a supercomputer in your pocket, but today it's almost impossible to even have a bank account without a smartphone. Pluto's transit through Aquarius during the next 20 years will have the profound destructive and rebirthing effects on the Aquarian attributes of life. These themes include the environment and all of the natural world, manual labor and working in nature, the idea of progressivism and its effects on the common man and woman, and of course, how technological innovation affects large groups of people. Aquarius is the sign of humanity as a collective entity. So communities and entire societies, both large and small, will be figuratively and sometimes literally destroyed and something new built from the rubble. The opposite sign from Aquarius is Leo, and Leo has this quality of what we need to conserve in our way of life and in our personal lives. And it's about preserving certain traditions and not losing touch with them. So Aquarius is about progressing forward, doing something new, adding new things. So there's always this push and pull of what we need to conserve, so a conservative party, and then what we need to include or change and progress towards. So there's always this push and pull between Aquarius and Leo. Well, Pluto in Aquarius, it's going to cause people who consider themselves politically progressive, they're going to have to ask themselves, what are we progressing towards and where are we progressing to? Because without asking these simple questions and not being able to see the path laid out in front of us, these people will easily be swept up into and transitioned into the transhumanist nightmare that has already been extensively mapped out by the technocrats. But now let's return back to how to adapt our Venus in a healthy way and the positive changes already underway that many people are making amidst this long-term Pluto transit in Aquarius. One area of good news is that Aquarius is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn and Venus are highly compatible planets for a number of reasons. Best friends, you could say. Essentially, Pluto will be destroying and rebuilding the domain of Saturn, which means that revitalizing and reorientating our Venus will lend a helping hand to the Aquarian and Saturnian areas of experience. One of the elements of the Saturn force in our consciousness is understanding when it's time to stop, when whatever we're actively doing, if we continue, is just going to give negative returns if we keep trying to grind it out. Sometimes it's simply better to do nothing, or at least go and take a nap and come back a little later. This is part of Saturn's job, to keep us from wasting valuable energy. Saturn is exalted in Venus's sign Libra, and this combination is excellent at knowing how to get rid of excesses and the wasteful parts of our lives. So take a step back and make efforts to simplify your relationship with technology and practice hitting the brakes when it comes to falling into the hypnotic mania of technological progress. Maybe don't buy that Alexa, which will be incessantly spying on you and transmitting your private life and conversations to Amazon in real time. Think twice about the need to upgrade devices more than absolutely necessary, and go analog wherever you can. Buy a record player, collect and read physical books, and if you have the capacity, downgrade to a dumb phone, or try out one of the alternatives to smartphones. They're kind of medium dumb phone smartphones, such as a light phone. Saturn is the part of us that quite literally forces us to stop and rest so that Venus can come in and rejuvenate us via the pleasures of life. It's important to change our entertainment habits and to stop overindulging in the endless amount of content being produced out of Hollywood and the big studios especially. Be more old school and attend a live theater event or a concert. Get out into the real world and prioritize forms of entertainment that require presence and physical interaction. As I mentioned, Pluto in Aquarius, which is the sign of the natural world and humanity's effect upon it, will inspire people to reconnect with nature. And the easiest way to start doing that is building a home garden, which is the perfect combination of Saturn and Venus. Saturn rules over time and the small everyday tasks that keep life moving in the most practical sense, while Venus is what we find beautiful and things that bring greater value into our life. So investing our time and energy into a garden not only makes you more self-sufficient and environmentally conscious, but it naturally increases your sense of self-value when you've grown something from scratch. And of course, it will improve your dietary habits, as Venus is the planet of the quality of our food and drinks. Remember that the natural world is the ultimate technology. The healing plants and herbs, the animals, the cycles of life are all meant to teach us more about ourselves. And astrology and cosmology play an important part in understanding who we are and how we're intricately connected via the macrocosm and the microcosm. The ultimate expression of this awareness of the natural world is the back to the land movement that is quietly seeping into people's consciousness. Many people and couples and families in their 30s and 40s, and some in their 20s early on, are already making this major lifestyle change, although you won't hear much about it in the major media outlets. The worldwide lockdowns were a major wake-up call to many people that a major change is needed if we're going to build a better and more sustainable world. Over time, there will be a greater urgency to start farms and small communities and to relearn the manual skills of our ancestors. Venus rules over our manual dexterity, and a person with a healthy Venus has a very graceful presence, or in other words, their movements and their ability to use their body is fluid. So manual labor is actually a very positive Venusian quality. This is where incorporating technology can be of great benefit. We all have YouTube and the internet, and there are countless podcasts we can learn from about how to bring back these valuable skills into our lives. But perhaps the most important Venusian change to consider is the means of trade and how we acquire things that we need in life. The worldwide supply chains are as fragile as ever, and if there are further disruptions in them, would you be able to survive in your own right? This subject is the greatest folly, or you could say the conceptual blind spot of the current environmental movement and the environmental activists. You see these protests in big cities, or for example, there was a gathering in Brooklyn, New York, where I used to live, calling for the end of capitalism for the sake of the environment, or at least a restructuring of industrial production on a massive scale. But if they got exactly what they wanted next week, or even gradually over the next couple years, where are they going to get their food? What about their clothes? Their very basic survival is 100% dependent upon food being shipped directly into their neighborhood, not to mention the gasoline it takes to power the vehicles to get the food to them. It's the phenomenon of the hangover after the revolution. Let's say you overthrew the system oppressing you. Well, then now what? Do you have another system in place to replace it? I don't think these environmental activists realize that they're biting the hand that feeds them. There is no escaping the fact that a sustainable alternative economy is becoming more and more necessary. A healthy Venus is being able to identify this reality, to read between the lines, because Venus gives the intelligence of poetry, and to be able to eloquently describe reality in few words and in metaphorical language, to be able to see this reality and then adjust economically by creating mutually beneficial relationships with people who have what you need, and then providing others with something of value that you yourself have created. Going back to a full-blown local barter economy might be a little extreme, but the point is that a healthy Venus understands that on a base level, a healthy exchange begins with you having something of value to contribute to other people and the rest of the world. So these are some examples of how to evolve your Venusian consciousness, and I have really barely begun to scrape at the surface of the many significations of Venus. It's a truly fascinating planet and possibly the least understood as far as its depth is concerned. But I'm going to leave you with one final thought. Venus is exalted in the sign of Pisces, which is the sign of abstraction, spiritual evolution, the depths of one's self-awareness, and the process of liberation. So healing and evolving the Venus force within you, and therefore helping to evolve the Venus force in society, requires that you understand what makes you valuable as an individual, what gives you peace, and a sense of connection to the greater scheme of things. A Piscean Venus is able to connect on a deep level with others because they fostered a deep connection to themselves in a spiritual sense, i.e. a non-material sense. For example, an unhealthy Venus can be a very materialistic person or base their self-identity on things outside of them. So to connect that Piscean Venus back to the idea of technology, well, Steve Jobs said that the first experiences he had while tripping on acid, they elicited this otherworldly, dreamlike, and life-changing experience when he saw reality from an entirely new and even supernatural perspective, which is a very Piscean kind of experience, although a more healthy Piscean experience is not having to use drugs to get to that kind of dreamlike, supernatural state. So Steve Jobs said that the goal of his was when you bought one of his products, one of his computers, was to elicit that same kind of psychedelic experience when you bought and used his products. So his vision was to merge the use of technology with the sense of a kind of spiritual epiphany. And if you just look at today's Apple stores, they look very much like technological churches or technology churches, with its geniuses, the high-level workers there, acting like priests there to sort out your technical life. In the coming years, it's important to evolve into a greater spiritual awareness using the force of Venus that already exists within you. And you don't need a computer or some new technological gadget to do it for you or to interface a spiritual experience with you. Appreciate the inherent quality of your individuality and share it with others. This is the essential of Venus. Stepping away from heavy dependence on black mirrors means re-empowering yourself instead of giving your power away in the worship of technological innovation.